Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show right here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I am, as always, your host, Tiger Paul Craven. My buddy Jordan Bowman will be joining us momentarily. But before we get into tonight's show, as always, if you are not subscribed to the channel, what are you doing, man? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. Hopefully you like what we do here, and you'll hit that subscribe button for us. Hit that like button. Really helps us out on these live videos, brings more people in, and helps grow the show, which is always the goal. And certainly last but not least, if you want to support the show, go ahead and hit that super chat feature. As you guys know, me and Jordan will go through a planned portion of the show where we talk about various topics that we wanted to cover tonight. And then at the end of every single show, we kind of turn it over to the comment section. We let you guys drive the show from there, answer as many questions, and interact with you guys as much as possible. But again, there's usually so many comments that we cannot get to every single one. So if you would like to have your comment definitely read by us, highlighted, and responded to, or your question answered, feel free to hit that super chat feature. It also helps support the show and all the work that me and Jordan do here on the Voice of College Football. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. And without further ado, let me bring on my co-host, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing awesome, man. You know, this is one of my favorite times of the year. You know, other than football season, this is probably my favorite time of the year because you're at that point where, you know, baseball and softball are now fully underway and basketball is ramping up toward the postseason, which, you know, we don't get many opportunities to be excited about basketball, but you know, this team has been through some rocky portions, but overall, I think it's a good team and they're squarely in the tournament. So, I mean, there's a lot going on in Clemson athletics. And then, of course, we got spring practice coming up next week. So we have a lot to discuss around this time. So always excited to do it.
Yeah, man, it's absolutely insane this time of year. I mean, you know, you guys know, love Clemson softball, Clemson baseball's in full swing. They're just starting out on fire. The men's basketball team is definitely making the tournament. So crisis averted there. You know, they'll make the tournament. Yet to be seen what they'll do once they make the tournament. But again, it's always fun to watch all these other programs start having great success. And, you know, hope that they have great seasons. Hope that men's basketball does well in the tournament. You know, not a one and done first round exit. We would hope. But again, you never know what you're quite going to get with Clemson basketball. They tend to like to break the hearts of Clemson fans every single year, no matter what happens. John gets in and mentions the gymnastics team. They're killing it, man. Inaugural season for the gymnastics team. I think last year was the inaugural season for the women's lacrosse team, and they killed it. I mean, these Clemson's just rolling out these, you know, new sport after new sport, and it seems that they have the recipe for success when it comes to starting new programs, regardless of what the sport is. You think, you know, 5 or so years back when they started, you know, softball, and it kind of blew up, and, you know, every game seems to be a sold-out game over there in McWhorter Stadium. You know, the gymnastics is the same thing. They got huge crowds in there. They're you know, they're performing well and seemingly winning every meet they can. So really cool to see all the growth. Yeah, well, you know, you can't win them all, I guess.
Yeah.
And I won't pretend.
I just hate losing to NC State, man.
I know. It's the worst.
In gymnastics, basketball, whatever it is, I just don't care for them.
just name the sport. Name the sport. But yeah, man, tons going on around Clemson, and not to mention spring practice is right around the corner for the Clemson Tiger football team, which is our favorite team, by the way. Love all the Clemson sports, but everything else pales in comparison to the Clemson Tigers football team. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Glad your week went well. My week went well as well. It's, you know, super busy. I mean, just par for the course. That's life. It's a busy time of year.
It's
Lots
tax
of stuff.
season. We were talking about it.
Yeah, we were talking about tax season before we popped on. Absolutely. You know, what a great time of year. You know, you get to Uncle Sam's just plucking money out of your bank account or your check, I should say, every single week or 2 weeks or whatever your pay schedule is. And then at the end, you got to do this paperwork just perfectly, or he might penalize you just a little bit more.
Yep. Even though
So,
they already know how much you owe, but they want you to make sure that you know how much you owe and that you tell them how much you owe, even though they already know how much you owe. And if you don't get it right how much you owe,
that's right.
then they're going to take more money from you and possibly put you in jail.
If you put an extra digit or a decimal or whatever, you're done, dude. You are done. How dare you lie on this legally binding document?
Yeah.
By the way, all the information of which they already have.
Yep.
I don't know why they just can't be like, my electric company. They just send me the bill. I don't got to do the accounting paperwork like Duke Energy, right? They don't ask me to go out to my meter every month and be like, hey, we're going to need you to go out there and look at that meter and remember what it said last month and then write down what it said this month. And I swear, if you get any wattage, like decimal point over, we're penalizing you. The craziest thing I've ever heard of, but whatever. I digress. What a wonderful time of year. It's absolutely,
yeah, jail was an extreme. It was an extreme example. You would have to be doing some legitimate, fraudulent activities.
Yeah,
but
you
get what I'm saying.
You probably hadn't paid taxes in like 5 years, or I don't know, did something. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how you go to jail for tax fraud, but I'm sure it's people. With,
I don't want to find out. I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to go to federal prison. That does not sound like a good time. I probably wouldn't be able to keep up with Clemson football much in there. I don't know how it works exactly, but again, not looking to find out. But hope everybody's doing great tonight. What a great night to be back on the show. Always a good day to be a Clemson Tiger. I look forward to our Thursday shows every week, and we're back on our normal schedule. No more missing, at least for the foreseeable future, as long as we can help it anyway, Jordan. Not everything is always under our control, but we do the best we can. But we got 17 people in the live chat right now, Jordan. Thank you guys so much for showing up. Please hit that like button if you have not already. And if you are not subscribed, listen to us for a little bit. If you like what you hear, you like what we're doing, hit that subscribe button and help us grow this channel. We got John in here. Jackson is in here. Nobody in particular is in here. I didn't know if you knew that, but
wow.
They're in here, and they are also nobody in particular, in case you're wondering.
Indeed they are. Oh, nobody in particular. Glad to have you. Nobody.
Brandon's in here. John, I already mentioned him, I think. Tiger Tom. So thank all of you guys for getting into the live chat section already. We do appreciate it. Again, like I said, once we get through our planned portion of the show, we will turn the entire keys to the show over to you guys, which is probably not a good idea, but it seems to be working out for us so far. So, they steer us in all sorts of directions, but it's always a good time.
Absolutely, man.
All right, man. Well, I guess we've done enough intro stuff. We've talked long enough. It's time to get into tonight's show and our first topic tonight. And I think the first thing we're going to cover tonight is the new playoff format, the new college football playoff format. Everybody knows the originally voted on and approved college football playoff format wasn't going to work anymore. Everybody knows the Pac-12. They kind of went away. They disappeared literally into thin air before our very eyes last college football season when they couldn't get a media deal done, and the Big Ten and the Big 12 and everybody poached every single school. The ACC got a couple from the Pac-12, and they ceased to be. Now I think they're the Pac-2, holding strong over there with Washington State and Oregon State. So good luck to the Pac-2. But everybody got together, all the athletic directors. Somehow the Notre Dame athletic director gets or not all the athletic directors, excuse me, all the commissioners of each conference. And, of course, Notre Dame's athletic director gets to weasel his way in there because somehow they're more important than everybody else, and their athletic director gets to show up to the meetings. But whatever, I digress. Okay. Regardless, new football format has been voted in. It was originally the 6-6 format. Now it's the 5+7. So as far as I understand it, Jordan, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I understand it, the five highest ranked conference champions will get automatic bids into the playoffs. The top four highest ranked conference champions will get the top four seeds. The fifth highest ranked conference champion will not necessarily get that fifth seed. They will just be ranked somewhere within 5 to 12, but they are guaranteed a playoff spot. That seemingly is going to be one of the group of five conference champions, whoever that may be. It seems that the most likely scenario, now again, that group of five team could be ranked more above one of the power four, I guess you could say, conference champions. But the most likely thing would be the ACC champion, the SEC champion, the Big Ten champion, and the Big 12 champions would be the four highest ranked conference champions. Those would be your 1 through 4. They get a first round bye, and then typically what I would think how it's going to work out, that group of five would be the next highest ranked conference champion. They would be ranked somewhere 5 to 12. Those first round playoff games will be played on college campuses, thank God. Home playoff games for the higher seeded team, and then into regular bowl game matchups in the second round, so on and so forth. So what do you think about this new format that was voted on? I'm sure it came at no surprise. Obviously, they were going to have to do something. And really, this is a short-term solution to a long-term problem. This is only going to be the case for the next 2 seasons, and then we're going to be voting on something else in the very near future. Who knows what college football looks like after this form of the playoff is over. It could look completely different than it does right now. I wouldn't put it past it. It seems that college football is changing at a very rapid pace. It's hard to keep up sometimes. Big news dropping left and right. Every single offseason for like the past 3 has seemingly just been like huge bombshell after huge bombshell. So what's your thought on the new playoff format? Would you have changed anything? Do you like it? Are you cool with it? What's your kind of initial thoughts when you heard about it and all the little tweaks that they made?
Well, I mean, if you've been a long time listener of our show, I've made my thoughts pretty clear about how I felt about expansion. Like I was never one to think that that's what the sport needed, but we're here now. That's what, that's the direction we're headed in. And I think there are some positives. I think this new format, I think it actually does benefit Clemson and the ACC, at least as it currently stands, a little bit. I think just the decrease in automatic bids, kind of helps. I mean, it was kind of a necessary consequence, but I also think, more at large spots, it would prevent, it makes it more likely that the ACC could potentially get more than one team in. Their conference champion will obviously more than likely be in, but with the old 6-6 format, with how the ACC has played out in the last couple of seasons, it's not been guaranteed that second-ranked team would be let into the playoff, and so more at-large bids, I think, does help the ACC at least somewhat. Not to the point where they're going to be getting more than the Big Ten or the SEC. I still think that those two conferences are going to dominate as far as the overall total of number of teams, but it won't be as I don't think it will be as pronounced as it might have been in the old format. So it's not a huge benefit, but I think it's a somewhat of a benefit for the ACC right now. So, and it was just kind of the thing that made the most sense with where things are, the dissolution of the Pac-12. I mean, how are you gonna justify the old format? And they don't want to give 2 group of 5 conference champions automatic bids. So
right.
What do? You just decrease the amount of automatic bids. So that's kind of where we are. But Like you said, this is only going to be a thing for like 2 seasons, and before they have to vote on a new format. I saw something that they had during these meetings. They had discussed a potential 14-team playoff, which
Yes.
whatever. Um, the fact that that's even being like a conversation is pretty telling about kind of where we're headed. And it makes you wonder, like, what is the sport going to look like at that point? And
Yeah.
is how does the like is the ACC going to look the same? Is the Big Ten and the SEC, are they done expanding? If are we even going to be talking about the other conferences anymore?
Hmm.
Is it just going to be, are we going to have the super conference breakaway type thing that's been talked about forever? What all of this is tied in with how are the athletes going to be compensated? What are
Right.
there's so many like you know intersections of the playoff and NIL, the transfer portal, that still need to be resolved. And so it's like you said, this time of college football is just changing at a rapid rate, and it makes things really difficult to really look too far ahead, because I feel okay with this new playoff format, but I might not feel that way next year because a new bombshell might drop. That's just kind of what's going on now. So, but this is I think in the short term, at least for this season, I think it gives more of a chance for the ACC to potentially, the ACC and the Big 12 to potentially get more teams in. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you bring up a ton of good points, and college football is rapidly changing. And I don't think, honestly, like if I'm just speaking truthfully, I don't think we've seen the half of it yet. I think it's going to still drastically change. Like, I think it has the potential within the next 2, 3, 4 years to look vastly different than it even does right now. And think about how much the sport has changed in the last 4 or 5 years. And I think that could be expedited very quickly because of this kind of 2 year deadline they're going to be working with. Like, college football is going to have to get to some sort of a different point. I don't think after the 2 years of this approved playoff format play out, I don't think college football is going to look the same. So, and I don't think the parties involved are going to agree to the same things that they agreed to this time around. So, and you unpacked it pretty well. There's tons of stuff to talk about, the NIL stuff, the you know the possible revenue sharing that might happen with the players. Are the players going to become employees of the university instead of student athletes? Are they actually going to be employees that have a salary and all this sort of stuff? And like, I don't know if everybody fully realizes like what that will mean for the players. Like, there will be some benefits to that, but there will be some drawbacks to that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about. It seems nice when you're like, oh, everybody's going to have this steady money coming in, but believe me, there will be drawbacks. Like, these universities and the college football as a whole, and the big players that make the big bucks and the big money, they're not going to give all the money away. So there will be drawbacks to it, I think. But who knows what it looks like in a couple years? But at least as of now, we know what the next 2 years of the postseason will look like in college football. And I agree with your point of this gives the ACC, particularly the ACC and the Big 12, an opportunity to get more than one team in, which is really all you can hope for if you're those two conferences. Because let's face it, the perception, the public perception, the major media outlet perception on both the ACC, well, more so the ACC, but also the Big 12, is that they're inferior leagues, right? You have the SEC, you got the Big 10, and then those other two conferences over there, right? So it'll be interesting to see how the first iteration of it plays out in 2024. I'm interested to see. I think I like what the solution that they came up with. I mean, it's not like they had a lot of time to sit down and figure this out. Decisions had to be made pretty quickly because, you couldn't allow automatic bids, like you say, to two group of five conference
No,
champions. That's just not going to work.
that was never going to happen.
I don't know that they need one automatic bid, but that is what it is. I'm of the belief that maybe the group of five should have their own individual playoffs where they could, do their own thing. But again, I may be in the minority with that sort of thinking, but it could go a ton of different ways. I think college football is in a very volatile place right now. Like it's who knows? I mean, the amount of bombshells that have dropped in the past like 3 years and the drastic changes that have happened to college football, I don't really think there's anything off the table at this point. Like, all this crazy news that comes out about college football, like so conditioned to this point, is just like, that makes sense. That's crazy. Man, the Pac-12 went away. Yeah, that sounds about right. Like,
Yep.
in the day and age we live in college football, man, like honestly, nothing can really surprise you at this point. It's
Nope.
The changes are drastic and they're happening all the time. So
Absolutely. But from an on the field standpoint, and from a Clemson standpoint, I do think the chance that Clemson could have an opportunity to host a playoff game at some point would be really cool. So
that'd be awesome, dude.
you got to take the good with the bad. I mean, hopefully you're one of those automatic bids. That's where Clemson wants to be. But even if you're not, and you have an opportunity to host a playoff game like that, that would be huge. And that's something that people have been clamoring for. When these models of the expanded playoff were being discussed, and they're having the opportunity to have these playoff games played on college campuses is a lot of fun. And I could only imagine what Death Valley would sound like in a home playoff atmosphere like that. That would be special. That would be special.
Man,
so
dude,
you got to take the good with the bad with a lot of these things. And
yeah, for sure. It's like, look, I'm not one that necessarily likes all the changes that have happened to college football, but they're also like nothing's ever all good and nothing's ever all bad, right? Like there's always pros and cons to everything that happens. Would I have opted for an expanded playoff? No, I was in your camp. I didn't think we needed an expanded playoff. I didn't think it made sense for the sport. I didn't really mind the 14 playoff at all. I thought it was a pretty good format. But again, that stuff was going to happen eventually just because of the amount of money that can be made off the playoff. As soon as those TV networks and those executives see the dollar signs that can be made, expansion was always going to be the next step. And where it ends, we don't really know at this point.
Absolutely. Zachariah, thank you for the $2 super chat. He asked a great question. He says, "Think gambling has anything to do with all of this?" Oh, I certainly do, at least to some degree. Gambling in the betting market has always been it's been a part of college football for decades. So I mean, it's not anything new, but it's a market that's becoming more and more, commercialized, as more and more states begin legalizing sports betting, and the more it's become a more, mainstream part of the sports landscape. So, that's a market that still has not been fully tapped to its potential. And, these big suits that make all these decisions, they certainly want a piece of that pie as well. And Vegas certainly wants, they would love to have a lot of involvement with college football, and like as they have, and make it more mainstream and marketable. So that's, I mean, I think that's certainly been part of the conversation, even if it's not been at the forefront. That's something that has always been a part of college football. So gambling, 100%.
I think absolutely. Look, you can trace back any of the changes to college football, and they all trace back to one singular thing, and that is money. It is a money-driven sport, just like any other thing. It is an entertaining sport. It is an entertainment business, and the people that are truly up there making the decisions the number one thing that is going to influence all those decisions is money. What is going to make college football the most money? That's just the name of the game. And is gambling a part of that? Absolutely, 1,000%. It's a part of that, and certainly plays a role in it. So no doubt about that. But going back to some of the good things that have come from, some of the changes in college football, I think about, like you mentioned, a home playoff game for Clemson. I mean, you think about a home playoff game, nighttime in the Valley, that atmosphere would be absolutely electric.
I can only imagine, man.
I mean, with a big time team coming into the Valley and the amount of people that would be there going crazy, affording a ticket, you might have to mortgage, your kidney or something to get into the game. But man, would it be a heck of an atmosphere and event to be a part of, man. You think about stuff like that, and it's like, man, I get certain aspects of it, but I do think some of it is a bit unfortunate of what has happened to college football. But again, we got what we got. I love the sport of college football, and I'm not going to quit watching it. So I'm not going to sit up here and pretend like, oh, well, I don't like the expanded playoffs, so I'm going to stop watching college football. No, don't be ridiculous. I'm not doing that. Okay, it's not going to happen. So they would have to do like a whole lot of stuff for that to even be considered, and even then, it probably would not cross my mind not to watch Clemson football.
And that's the problem, man. They know that.
I know.
They know that, and that's the double-edged sword. It's like,
right.
I mean, you and I both, love Clemson and Clemson football, and it's been a part of our lives for our entire lives. Yeah. And so it would take something monumental for us to, ever consider like I'm just turning it off and moving on. Like that's and they know that. Like they know that the diehard college football fans aren't going anywhere, and that's the problem.
That's the whole point, right? Is like a lot of the people that tend to be fighting against some of the, not all the stuff, but some of the stuff that's happening in college football tend to be the guys like me and you, right? The diehards. You grew up, like the roots run deep for a lot of these like diehard college football fans, right? So to your point, yeah, they know we're not going anywhere. Like it really doesn't matter. So they're not making decisions thinking about that diehard college football fan. They're making decisions about those people that like kind of watch. Maybe sometimes they're like, oh yeah, I heard that one team with the elephant. Yeah, they won the national championship, didn't they? Who was their quarterback? Yeah, that dude, right? They want to bring more of those people in, right? Yeah. Because more of those people mean more money, more eyes, more money, so on and so forth. To your point, the guys like me and you, the people, the 28 folks that are live on our show right now, watching us talk about college football in the month of February, we're not going anywhere. Like we clearly got it bad, right? Like the roots run deep for us in college football. So I think that's some of the stuff that frustrates people like us, but you do understand it from a financial standpoint, and kind of the world revolves around money, and that's an unfortunate thing, but it is what it is. Everybody needs money. Everybody's got to pay bills. So
yeah,
it is what it is.
It is what it is.
So new college football playoff format. The 5+7, 5 automatic bids, 7 at-large bids. We'll see if the ACC can sneak in 2 teams in the first iteration of the 5+7 college football playoff format. We'll see. I don't know. You think they can figure out a way to not have the ACC champion as an automatic bid? I'm just kidding.
I mean, after what happened with Florida State this past year, I wouldn't put it would take something monumental, but
look, they might not want to try them Florida State fans 2 years in a row. Okay.
Oh no.
Let's say Florida State does win the ACC, and then they get dropped below 2 Group of 5 conference champions.
Ask Kirk Herbstreit how he's feeling when it comes to FSU fans.
You better not test them as an FSU fan, man. They on the edge, man.
They've been on his neck.
Look here.
still today, like he posted, we're going to talk about the EA college football game later on, but he posted that how he was going to be in the game, and you go to his replies, and it's just nothing but Florida State fans saying, "I'm going to have you muted when you call our games when I'm playing the game." And I'm just like, man, it's February. Like
they're not letting it go.
Not letting go.
Look, I don't know if Kurt Herbstreit knows it or not, but I think like he's created a mortal enemy with Florida State fans. I don't think they're letting it go, man.
They hate
like
that, man.
You would think at this point, like we're several months removed from what happened. I think they're more mad today than they were when it happened. Like it's almost like the more they hear about it, the more angry they get about it. Like especially with Kirk Herbstreit, man, they're letting that dude have it. He better hope College Game Day don't go to Tallahassee this year, because it might not go well.
He might have to have body. He legitimately might have to have some security.
Yeah, I'm not joking. Like there might be one like rabid fan down there that might actually try some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not condoning that at all, but I'm just saying, like that fan base, they've had
drawn their ire, man.
Yeah. He's well within the crosshairs of that fan base. They are targeting him on Twitter and all over the place in his comment section, and it's funny to see. That's always the entertaining side of college football, right? No physical or any stuff like that happening. No, nobody's getting assaulted, nobody's getting beat up, but the comment sections and the Twitter feeds, man, he's getting brutalized in those. So it'll be hilarious to see how it all plays out. I'm actually gonna hope for that. I'm gonna hope that College Game Day goes to Tallahassee.
I'm gonna say a silent prayer for Kirk. I hope his safety.
He might be tied up with another game or be sick that week. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I'd call out.
I would. I'd be like, hey man, can y'all do that remote thing like y'all did with Coach when COVID was going on? He was broadcasting from his backyard.
Yeah,
just do that for me, man. I'm not doing this.
Well, just let Nick carry the show. Nick Saban,
put Nick in my spot. I'm not coming. I'm not doing it. But yeah, man. So that really wraps up the discussion on the new college football playoff format. I personally like it. I think it's probably the best solution to the problem that they had at hand. And we'll see how the first iteration shows up. It's one of those rare situations where like they passed it in the offseason and we're going to immediately see it happen. So that'll be fun. That'll be interesting. It'll spawn a bunch of conversations prior to the season, during the season, and as we approach, as we near the end of the college football season for the 2024 season. So it's going to give us tons of content to talk about, and that's always a good thing, especially for me and you. But let's go ahead and transition into our next topic. And the next thing we're going to talk about is the EA college football game coming out in 2025. So this has been talked about for, man, I don't even know how long. Long.
It's coming out this year.
Well, it's coming out this summer. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. The 2025 game coming out the summer of 2024 this year. We should see it probably July timeframe, I'm assuming, is when they're going to drop the game. That tends to be EA's MO there. But so we finally get the return of college football video games. We haven't had one, Jordan, since 2014. That was the last NCAA college football game that was ever produced, and everybody knows. Yeah, me too. And everybody knows the infamous court case that got the game nixed. Everybody hates it. Okay, everybody always wanted the NCAA college football game to come back. And NIL, talking about the good and the bad that have come over all the changes of college football. One of the great things that I think has happened in recent years is the ability for college football to come back in its truest form with the real teams and the real players and all that kind of stuff. So before we get into the opt-in, opt-out player thing that got posted and it's being talked about heavily in the media, just talk about quickly your initial thoughts when you heard the game was coming back for real, the trailers that have been released so far. How excited are you to buy this thing and play it? Just give me a quick rundown of your initial thoughts when it was 100% confirmed, because it's been rumored for years now that it was coming back, and it pushback, no it is, yes it isn't, a new company's coming out with one, no they're not. So initial thoughts when it was 100%, this is definitely happening.
I mean, just kind of, I still haven't fully processed it, but it's something that was just a huge part of my childhood. The NCAA, football games were, I played those things religiously. Like I said, I still have the last edition. I did 14, and I still play that from time to time. I got my old Xbox 360, just it's sitting plugged up. So I can pop that game, and then that's really all I play on it. I don't even revisit anything else. But I still have it because I love college football that much, and that game holds a special place in my heart. So, but like just when the announcement came, it was just kind of like man, it's just really been 10 years, and some of the drawbacks I had were, well, it's made by EA, which in recent years has drawn the ire from a lot of the sports gaming community, just from, especially because of Madden and the situation with FIFA, the discontinuation of that series, and all the practices, the business practices of EA as a whole, as a gaming company. But I'm going to give this a chance because I love college football, and I think that I got to see gameplay first before I'm fully just on the train. But so far, like from the things that have come out about it, there's a lot of reasons to be excited, because it's just the fact that it's going to be you're getting an update after 10 years. Like, there's so many things about the sport that has changed that I'm really interested to see what they do with in video game form, like the transfer portal, like NIL, which are both confirmed to be in the game. Just the different recruiting calendar. It was pretty. The old games, like, recruiting was pretty simplistic. NCAA 14 had a point system, and then the games before that, you had your visits and you phone calls, and it was pretty. It was, engaging, but it was pretty surface level as far as recruiting was concerned, and you didn't have to manage your staff very much. So there's a lot about this game and the capabilities of the new console that make you really excited to be like, oh man, I'd love to see how they implement this. So I'm still excited about it, but there's still that inkling in the back of my head that's, oh well, EA's making the game, but they say it's a completely different. It's a different team than who works on Madden, so you got to have hope, I guess.
Look here, I'm trying to tell you, EA, don't mess up this opportunity, man.
Please
like,
don't.
If this is just like a carbon copy of that terrible Madden game that they roll out every single year and try to charge people $70 and $80 for, pretending that they made this new game, look, I hope they don't do that. Okay, first and foremost. Second of all, there, like you mentioned, like you laid it out pretty well. Like, the opportunities for them to build in, different modes and things into this game are insane. You imagine when you're sitting there, Jordan, and you're recruiting and you're offering NIL deals, and then you run out of NIL money. Like, what's that going to look like in the game, dude? Like, what happens when you run out of NIL money? Like, do you got to go have a dinner for the boosters so you can collect more NIL money?
I was muted. I was muted.
Okay.
You're good. I was saying, could you imagine like like your freshman All-American left tackle leaving and hitting the portal because you didn't give them $500,000?
Bro, that's the other thing. Like, are you gonna have to like re-recruit your roster every year? Like, here comes freaking Bama and Georgia and Ohio State and whoever else, right? Texas, and they're like, hey, Makuba, how's $50,000 sound? And you're like, dang,
Yeah.
there goes my my star safety or whatever.
Yeah.
There goes my starting nickel cornerback or whatever. Like the the opportunities for them are endless.
Yeah.
Also, that sounds like pretty stressful to me. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get through a season, bro. Like
Yeah, I know.
recruiting. I'll be like, oh my god, I'm so stressed out right now.
Like you're not even thinking about the game you have coming up because you're like, imagine I'm rebuilding. Like, say I'm Kennesaw State's going to be in the game. They're moving up to FBS. Like, say I want to do a Kennesaw State dynasty, and I have this under the radar wide receiver that I developed, and he's turned into a superstar.
Oh, he's gone, dude.
He's gone.
He's gone, man. He's going to play. He's going to play for USC for Lincoln Riley, dude. He's out. Like you're not keeping him.
No.
What booster from Kennesaw State is going to pay him to stay? Like
your NIL budget is going to be like $10,000.
That's going to be the thing. Like that's what I'm interested to see. Like how are they going to do like the NIL budgeting? Like it's going to be based off of like school and like it could be crazy. Like it could get into all sorts of crazy stuff. Like it's plus with like you said, all the new technology and stuff like that, man. It might take you 3 months to get through a recruiting cycle.
And I made a tweet today, and I was like, imagine, like I start my Clemson, when it comes to the transfer portal, I start my Clemson dynasty, and the transfer portal menu is locked. Like I can't, if they don't let you have, like, could you imagine, man? Like, the possibilities are endless. Like,
you'd have to fire Dabo to sign an NIL or sign a transfer portal player. You go to the transfer portal menu. They're like, no. It's just NA. No, don't apply. You can't see.
It's a black. It's like all the player names are blacked out.
Are they going to put the message boards in there for you to read? When all the fans are talking crap about you as a coach.
I hope they put. Oh, could you imagine? They had a message board like how they used to have. Like they would put like that. Madden has like that social media feature when you do your franchise.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine? Like you see the message board?
Bro, the message board's just popping up on there. They're like, this is the worst coaching hire ever. Trash. He don't never sign anybody out of the freaking portal. I hate this coach. Why'd we hire this offensive line coach? Man, it'd be awesome just to see you lose a game and the message boards just start going off. Fire this coach. Fire Jordan. Fire.
Yeah.
It starts trending on fake Twitter over there.
Yeah. Oh man.
Like I said, the opportunities for EA. I hope EA's listening to us, Jordan. Because we're giving them all sorts of free ideas. We are. This is all free ideas, man. We don't charge a thing.
I'm not gonna lie. That would be funny as hell. Like that. Bro, that'd be an excellent troll job. But then I'd be mad.
I'd be really mad, dude.
I'd laugh.
Oh yeah, no, I would definitely laugh. And then I'd be like, man, that's messed up. How am I supposed to build this team? This ain't fair.
Man.
Oh man,
you have to. It's you have a God's NIL fund.
Yeah,
I saw somebody. I think Jay said hit up New Spring. Oh man, they put New Spring in the game. You go hit them up.
But man,
this 5-star left tackle needs $50,000.
Yeah. You got to go get your weekly stipend from Mana Church, some mega church out there that you're funneling money through. Oh man, that'd be great.
Man, the jokes write themselves.
Oh man, it's endless, dude. It's endless. It truly is endless. Are you gonna have to swipe your credit card to get more NIL funds?
Yeah, like
buy tokens.
I think Tickled Tiger was saying in the comments, like, knowing EA, they would totally do this, but you got to use real money. You got to use real money to fund your NIL. Like
You got
$25 is to get like 5 million in NIL funds or something like that. I don't know.
yeah, you got to have a monthly subscription that's just going to hit your credit card every month to keep your NIL funds full. If not, EA's taking all your NIL funds.
Me when my star quarterback hits the portal because I didn't pay my $20 a month to. Oh man,
my credit card didn't go through on my EA monthly subscription.
Yeah.
So now all my players left.
My roster hits the portal.
They just all hit the portal. Like, we got to cancel the season, people. I don't know what to do. Oh man, can you cheat in the game?
Yeah, I hope so.
Can you do like NCAA violations on purpose?
Like there's a certain level, like and it's like maybe it's like a I don't know, like it's a RNG, like whether or not you get caught or not. So like it's like and there's like different levels, like you illegally contact a recruit during a dead period is like not as big as you offering like a multi-million-dollar deal to a 5-star quarterback. That they're not putting that in the game. That would be a bad look, but that would be funny.
Bro, that'd be so much fun though. You see how much you could get away with before the NCAA comes down.
Risk factor, man. and then the an NCAA probe shows up on your campus. Yeah,
Jay says those Colorado classes are gonna be crazy, bro. Deion's gonna have a new freaking team every single year, dude. Yeah, no one from the last team will still be at the school. It'll be a brand new team every single year.
It'd be true to life, man. It'd be the most true to life sports video game of all time.
You could be over there practicing, and you're just gonna see a Michigan coach over there with a video camera.
Yeah. Oh man, could you imagine they put sign stealing in there?
They put sign stealing, yeah. Michigan coach gonna be over there filming your practice, stealing your signs.
Yeah.
Oh man, I hope they do all of it, but they probably won't.
No, they won't.
None of that fun stuff is going to be in the game, but it would be super entertaining if it
would. It would be the most dynamic, like engaging, like franchise mode in any sports game ever if they put all of that in there.
Yeah. And I get that's probably a lot easier said than done than trying to, figure out all the coding and stuff that would go into that. But man, that would be the most elite game ever. And they'd be able to charge whatever they wanted if they did all that stuff.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, this is a really exciting time for the sport. The opportunity to finally the NCAA games made a killing. Like they sold extremely well, and the 10-year it's probably going to break the internet when this game drops. Like like the only thing that will top it is like when Grand Theft Auto 6 drops. But I don't think beyond that. I can't think of a game that's going to have like just a crazier like first day release than this.
No,
game.
Because people have been waiting for this game for a decade. It's literally been 10 years since this game has existed, and people me and you still have the old game. Like people still play the old game. The rosters get updated every single year. That's how much people want this game. So it's going to be absolutely huge. EA Sports is going to make bank on this video game. I don't know what their sales normally look like when they, drop a new video game, but I guarantee you this one will, supersede a lot of those.
Numbers.
Yeah, it's going to do numbers.
It's going to do numbers.
It's going to do numbers. It's going to be big time. They will not have a hard time making money on this game. And hopefully that shows them that, hopefully they don't get into their little lazy rotation like they did with Madden and never really update the game at all. Yeah. And it's just the same carbon copy every year. Hopefully, they introduce the game and they continue to grow and add fun things, right? Yeah. Like, I know we were joking a lot with some of our crazy ideas and the the jokes and the digs we were doing at certain teams, but like that stuff really would be fun. Like some of that stuff in the game would be really fun, would be entertaining, and I think would bring a lot of people in for the game. But let's talk a little bit of the business side of it, I guess, for the players while we're on the new EA college football game and what they are going to be compensated. So I guess from what I can gather, there's going to be an opt out or opt in portion, right? So if you opt in, basically what's going to happen is EA Sports is going to send you $600 and they're going to give you a copy of the game and you're going to be in the game, right? Your name, image, likeness will be used in the game. Your number, your stats, all that stuff is going to be in the game. You get $600. You get a physical copy of the game. Cool, right? If you opt out, you get none of that, and you won't be in the game, I guess, until somebody programs you in the game like they do for NCAA 14 every year. So,
well, they said they won't let you do that. So I'm wondering how they're going to enforce that because.
Don't worry.
I guess the creative player is probably going to be really. It seems like it's going to be like really.
I don't believe them. There's some computer nerd out there that's going to come through in the clutch for us if some player says no, and he's going to build it out for us, and it's going to be great. They're going to figure it out. I got faith. in the computer guys. Those computer nerds, they know what they're doing. Don't mess around with them. I don't think EA Sports can stop them. But no, what are your thoughts on the compensation that EA is offering? Do you think $600 and a copy of the video game is a fair compensation? Do you think that's reasonable, or do you think people should be getting more, less? And what do you think the opt in and opt out will look like? Do you think most people will opt in, or do you think there will be a couple big names or a group of players that kind of hold out and say no? We want more. What are your kind of thoughts?
Yeah, if I'm being real, $600 and a free copy of the game is not a whole lot.
Yeah.
And from what from what I've read, and there was some backlash when all of that was announced. It hasn't been loud, but there have been some people that said that's not. Based on the numbers and how much their projected worth is, and it's not. That's not very much, and it's kind of exploitative. Like I saw, I follow Justin Falcinelli. If you Tiger fans remember him, former Clemson starting center for the 2018 national championship team, but he's been really involved with kind of player compensation. He's been a big voice in that behind the scenes as far as what the future of player compensation and what's fair. And he put out a pretty scathing tweet about I think it was a reply to somebody, but a pretty scathing critique of kind of the deal that EA was putting out for these players. And he was like, it was pretty exploitative because it's not even 1/10 of what the court case, one of the earlier the court case that caused the death of NCAA football. That case discussed how much these players were worth, and $600 isn't even 1/10 of what it was. And so, I think it's kind of a hard thing because I personally don't know the financials and what EA could possibly do, but $600 and a free copy of the game does seem kind of light, especially for the big name players. But it seems like there are going to be a lot of players that opt in because these are 18 to 22 plus year olds that aren't the most financially literate and really understand what they're worth. So on that front, I think it's kind of, but at the end of the day, it's up to them whether or not they choose to opt in. And obviously we've seen some big names opt in already, including Clemson's Cade Klubnik. So, there's a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of players that opt in, and it'll be a pretty complete. As far as the rosters are concerned, for the most part, complete rosters.
Yeah,
because plus I think a lot of the players that aren't big time starters, they are definitely more likely to accept it because they want to be in the game, and their profile isn't as high to be like, oh well, I think I'm worth more, even if they actually are. So that's kind of the moral dilemma of kind of how of all of this, but it's still a start. It's better than what they is better than what we did the old way, where these players weren't getting any.
Yeah, they weren't getting anything.
Yeah, I mean they weren't. Their likeness was used, but they didn't. They was it's QB. No, that's not Taj Boyd, or that's not Nuke Hopkins. That's wide receiver number 6. Like just stuff like that. Like, it's a start, but it's still not totally where it needs to be. So that's kind of where I am on it.
Yeah, look, I guess when you think about it, $600 really sounds like next to nothing, especially for a company like EA. And you think about it, right? So what? There's going to be 135 teams in the game.
134. Yeah.
Yeah. So 134 teams in the game, 85 scholarship players for each team, right? So you're talking 11, 12,000 players, somewhere in there. So between $6 and $7 million is what they're paying out. If everybody opts in, that's a little crazy, like that's almost nothing when you think about the money that they're going to make off of this game. I mean, you talked about it before about, just the buzz around this game from it disappearing 10 years ago. And we haven't seen it since. There's so many people that still play the old version in the game and the people that want it. So it seems like not enough money to me. But again, in order to move the needle with EA at all, I think it would have to be a collective thing for at least majority of college football players to opt out and say, no, that's not enough money. We're not happy with that. And frankly, I just don't see that happening. Just as we're excited about the game, a lot of these guys are excited too. And how cool would it be, to be in the first iteration of the new college football game, right? Like that'll kind of live forever and that sort of thing. So, and you mentioned there's a lot of young kids, right? They're not necessarily, they don't have a high level of financial literacy yet. They don't understand a lot of this stuff, which is why, NIL is such a problem in college football. And some of these people are being taken advantage of by people that understand finances far better than them. And it's not their fault. They just, like, how would you know that stuff unless you had personal experience or had been involved in it in some way? So I think EA is taking advantage of college football players once again. Although I'm very happy for the game, I'm glad it's coming out. I don't think they're compensating them enough based off of what they're going to make off the game. But again, EA is going to do what they're going to do. It is what it is at this point. Most of college football players are going to opt in. I don't really see a large contingent of them that are going to opt out. They're either going to get nothing or they're going to take their $600 in a free game and kind of let the rest of it be what it may. So that'll be interesting. Will, our resident Notre Dame fan, in here with the $2 super chat. Thank you so much for supporting the show, man. Really does mean a lot. We appreciate it. He says, who do you think will be the cover of the new college football 2025 game? And he asks, will it be Quinn Ewers? What do you think?
Well, I've seen a lot of things thrown out there. The really cool idea was, the Heisman. They put every Heisman winner on the cover since the game was nixed. That so that would be really cool. But then I also saw, they could potentially put Nick Saban on the cover to honor his retirement. That would make a lot of sense. But I could tell, Quinn Ewers is certainly a candidate. He's going to be he's one of the biggest names in the sport heading into next year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of different ways they could go with it. I personally think you got to put Nick Saban on the cover. Just he's the greatest of all time. You put him on the cover. He embodies a lot of what college football is and has been. And so, I think that would that would be the good send off, for him, and just to kind of honor what he accomplished and what he's meant to the sport. So, I I think it should be Nick Saban, but I wouldn't throw a hissy fit if he wasn't. But
Yeah,
that's the decision I would make.
I think that makes a lot of sense. That wasn't even a thought for me. I don't think before you just said it, and that really does make a lot of sense. I think that would be what they probably should do, seeing as how he is, pretty unanimously thought of as the greatest coach of all time. Just retired. I would do it. I'd put Nick Saban on the cover. But I also like that other idea of every Heisman Trophy winner since the game went away. That would be a really cool cover. And maybe they could, do a couple covers, right? The main cover and then maybe like a special edition type of cover. EA, they're always looking to maximize some profits.
Yeah, as Kevin,
there you go.
Kevin puts elegantly, Saban will be on the Ultimate Edition for only $99.
only $99.99.
No, they'll call it the GOAT Edition.
The GOAT Edition. Yeah, same exact game. You just got to pay extra for it.
You get extra. You get to start out with $1 million in NIL funds on your franchise too. That's
right. You get to start with the free, or no, if you get the Ultimate Edition, the Nick Saban edition, you get a free 1 year consultation from the GOAT himself on how to build your college football team.
Oh man, EA, they would totally do that.
Of course, 100%. Yeah. See, I didn't even see his comment before I said making a special edition, but just seeing how they do Madden, that 1000% makes sense. So it'll be interesting to see. I think it'll probably end up being Saban. I didn't think about that before, but that definitely makes the most sense now. Now that it's coming back, it happened to come in the year where Nick Saban retired. I mean, everything just seems to line up with that. So I think that'd be pretty cool to see. I'm just excited to play the game. I hope EA doesn't mess it up, man. There's a big potential for them to mess it up.
100%.
And they might, but if they don't, they can make a pretty epic game, as we were talking about earlier. So it'll be interesting to see how many players opt in, opt out. Will there be any big name players that put up a fight and say I'm worth more than $600? I guarantee you, there's at least one.
Yeah,
I don't know who it's going to be, but there'll be a couple of the big name guys that might try to get a little bit more than $600, and then it'll be interesting to see, like, will EA compromise? Will they give them extra money? And does that snowball into more people trying to do that? So that'll be interesting. Also, whoever they put on the cover, will they have to compensate them more than just the $600, or will it just be a quote unquote honor to be on the cover of the EA Sports college football game? Because I could see them spinning it that way, like, oh, it's just an honor to be on our cover.
I will say, I think it was announced that there would be like a bonus, like for different players, there would be bonus NIL opportunities, like, but as far as the base opting in for the game, it's like $600, and then so we'll see whether EA follows through on that. But even then, the players that don't get further NIL deals, the $600 plus a copy of the game isn't technically what they, if you're talking about fair compensation and based off of what they're said to be worth, like, that's still not great. But I don't know. We'll see. That's one of the toughest parts about this game and it coming to fruition. And the fact that we haven't seen any gameplay, is, when the game is supposed to come out in 5 months, we'll see.
Oh boy.
I,
It
I,
goes.
I I don't know. I mean, we did see some in the teaser trailer that they dropped. You saw some of the uniform of the jerseys and stuff. Um, yeah, and they weren't final products for sure because some of them weren't correct. But um, that's the closest thing we've got. So it's like, and they say it's not going to be. It's going to use the same performance system as Madden, but it's not going to be the same as Madden. So I don't.
Sounds like it's
I
going to
don't
be
know.
Madden
Yeah,
with college uniforms.
I'm going to be very upset if it's just reskinned Madden. I'm going to be very upset.
Look, I don't want to say it's going to be reskin Madden, but this is EA that we're dealing with. So
they've lied before.
we can't say it would surprise us if it's
Yeah.
just Madden reskinned with college football uniforms and college football stadiums. Yeah, let's hope they can get that right. I don't know. Like, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there.
Yeah,
I'm gonna let it go.
We could go down a full
Yeah, I'm gonna
another
let it
rabbit
go.
hole.
I'm gonna let it go. So there's our thoughts on the EA College Football 2025 game debuting this summer, according to EA Sports. But we'll believe it when we see it. Until the game actually is released, we don't know what it's going to look like or how good it's going to be. So, it is what it is. We'll see how it plays out. But on to the next story for us, Jordan. We got a couple more things to get into, and then we're going to turn it over to the comment section. Before we get into our next topic, if you guys are just tuning in, we got 25 people in the live chat right now. Go ahead and hit that like button for us. Hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed. Me and Jordan do this show, the All In Show, right here on the Voice of College Football every Thursday, 7 p.m. We're right here talking about college football, Clemson football, and everything in between. So if you like what we do here, please tune in. Please come back and help us grow our show and help us grow the channel. But moving right along into our next segment, Jordan, we're going to talk about the upcoming spring practice for our Clemson Tigers. The 2024 spring practice kicks off this Wednesday. An exciting time. We're finally back to football. The team's actually going to get on the field. All these 2024 recruits that we've talked endlessly about, we finally get to see the early enrollees in real-time situations in practice, hear interviews from the coaches and various players about what's going on. Football is finally back, at least in some sense, right? This is, it's an exciting time for me. I love spring practice. I love to hear about all the developmental stuff, how the young guys look, who's catching on to the playbook super fast, who's taking a little bit, who needs to catch up physically, right? All this stuff comes out in spring practice. We get a little bit more insight into some of these younger guys that just signed, been on campus for, roughly a month and a half, 2 months now. And they're really getting their feet wet with a full, kind of practice in Clemson uniform for the first time. So how excited are you that spring practice is finally here? We finally get to talk about like football that's actually being played on the field, not necessarily games, but hey, it's still football being played on the field. How excited are you?
Oh man, I just like you, I enjoy this time of the year all the time. But I feel like this offseason in particular, there's just a lot, to watch. And so, this is going to be one of the more intriguing spring practices that Clemson has had in quite some time. Just with, there's a lot of things going on. You talked about, the freshmen coming in that, we've talked about endlessly how high we are on them, the early enrollees. The new hires are a really big thing to watch. Like how, we've talked about their impact so far on the recruiting trail and the early returns there. But now we actually get to figure out who they are as coaches. Chris Rumpf has been here before, but how does he look in his second stint? And kind of how does he mesh with this particular group of defensive ends that he's going to be working with? How does Matt Luke jump in? And he has a pretty loaded as far as numbers wise group along the offensive line, and a lot of guys that could potentially play. And so, he's going to have to figure out, who he thinks that this team is going to need to rely on and kind of evaluate where we are from an offensive line standpoint. So that's going to be a lot of, those are going to be a lot of the things I'm watching. And of course, just the offense in general after last season, how does year 2 of the Garrett Riley regime as far as the offense is concerned look, and what things are they going to do differently? What is, how does Cade make improvements over his first year, his sophomore year, first year starting? So there's so many storylines, man, and it's going to be fun to kind of pick up things and get all these little tidbits. Who's showing out, who are some of the veterans that Clemson is expecting to rely on, and who are they going to be? Are they taking that next step to become big time contributors? Just a lot, man. And of course, at the head of it all is Dabo Swinney and kind of what he thinks of where this team is. So really exciting time, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and the best part about it, Jordan, is we're going to have more actual football to talk about in the next coming weeks as we go through, well, really the next month as we go through the entire spring practice, culminating with the spring game that I think is scheduled for April 6th this year. I think that's a Saturday, April 6th. So that'll be a great game to watch. That'll, the kind of culminating event of all the spring, but all the stuff that's going to happen in between. You mentioned, how does Cade look? How has he progressed? How does Chris Vizina look? Is he in a position to push Cade Klubnik, which I think is something that is needed, particularly this spring. I think Cade needs to be pushed by someone. Hopefully Chris Vizina has developed into, a point where he could actually do that. He could actually push him, right? And then you talk about some of the newcomers that are coming. How does a Brian Wesco look initially? Is he comfortable in the offense? Is he, is he physically ready to perform, or do they need to put a little bit of weight on him? How does he look against some of our DBs that are a little bit of higher competition and been in college for a year and been in the weight program for a year? Is he able to still get separation and things like that? And you think about a guy like Sammy Brown in the linebacker room. Is he going to plant himself in such a way that he's going to demand playing time regardless because of how well he's playing? There's a ton of storylines that are going to come out this spring and a ton of things that we're going to be looking for, questions to be answered. You think about the defensive end position. What do those guys really look like, right? This is going to be Chris Rumpf. To your point, we talked about, Matt Luke and Chris Rumpf and how amazing their impact has been on the recruiting trail, but where it's really going to matter is on the field. And they got who they got right now. The roster's full right now, so they got who they got right now. What does that evaluation process look like for Chris Rumpf? What does he think he has in that defensive end group? And then who leaves via the transfer portal? Because at the end of the day, we know at the end of spring, there's going to be people that look at their spot on the depth chart. They're not going to be happy with it, and they're going to pursue an opportunity elsewhere that's not Clemson. So what does the roster look like come the end of spring? And I think, one, that'll dictate, do we go to the transfer portal based off of performance in spring? So did the defensive ends come along as well as Dabo or Chris Rumpf or the rest of the coaching staff wanted them to? Or are they lacking, and now the coaching staff, Dabo and, maybe Chris Rumpf goes to Dabo and like, hey, I think maybe we need to go try to get somebody, right? So a lot of those questions that Clemson fans have had since last season ended and since the new hires have been made will start to be answered. Maybe not fully answered, but they'll start to be answered this spring. And I think that's what's so exciting about spring. That's what's so exciting to have kind of new blood injected into this coaching staff, proven coaches injected into this coaching staff that have legitimate experience, not just on the Clemson coaching staff. Nothing against promoting from within, but sometimes it's needed to get a fresh set of eyes, a fresh voice, a different perspective in the room, if you will, to really take you back up the mountain. And that's kind of what Clemson's trying to do. We're trying to climb back up that mountain. There's a 12-team playoff opportunity for Clemson. I would expect Clemson to make that 12-team playoff, but a lot of that will be dictated this spring.
100%. And so, these are the foundational, time, you can't learn everything about what your team is going to be in 2024 from spring practice, but it does give you a good idea about who you're going to be relying on. And so, I think it's a good thing. Heading into the spring is something that we need to talk about is kind of where we are from an injury standpoint. I think, as far as, this offseason is concerned, Clemson is in a better spot from an injury standpoint than they've been in some time. I think, really it feels like the last few off seasons, it's just been a litany of guys that were limited or didn't or flat out missed spring practice. But as it stands right now, you're not looking to miss a ton of guys, at least compared to recent years. So that gives you a really good opportunity to really get some competition. Last year, you didn't have that. You had so many guys out in the wide receiver room and the running back room, where you never really got to work with the full offense. But now you're in a situation where most of the guys, especially on offense, you're going to have. I mean, really, the only guy you probably won't have is Walker Parks. So I think, which is he's a big part of the offense, but everybody else, your quarterback, your running backs, your receivers are all in pretty good health, from what I understand right now. We'll get more clarity later, but so I think it's a big opportunity for Clemson to take more advantage of spring practice than they have been able to in recent years.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's a ton of things that need to be figured out on this team, and I can't wait to start getting answers. I can't wait to start seeing. Really, just like one of the big things that I really enjoy about spring the most is the young guys, right? Like all those new recruits that we brought in, all those mid-years, ton of mid-year guys that we brought in. How are they, transitioning into college football? Because sometimes it's with some of these guys, it's a somewhat seamless transition into college football. And then other times, guys really struggle. And it's not always based off of star ratings either. Like sometimes that 3-star that you recruited comes in and he just gets it, right? He's physically ready, mentally ready, he just transitions well for whatever reason, right? And then sometimes that 5-star comes in and it's a little rocky, right? Not exactly the easiest transition, whether it be playbook or physicality or, whatever the case may be. So I'm going to be interested to see how the coaches are talking, because I know the media will ask about, a lot of the big names, the Sammy Browns, the TJ Moore, all those kind of stuff, looks to be, to your point, a much healthier Clemson team, right? Heading into this spring than last spring. Last spring, I mean, I felt like we were playing with like pretty much half a team for majority of the spring last year, which doesn't bode well, right? Like it's just it takes so much away from you when you cannot rep guys. And yeah, were some of the guys that were missing last year veteran guys who maybe didn't need every single rep? Sure. But there's something to be said about repping your first team guys together, right? Building that continuity, building that chemistry. And I think it showed in certain instances last year on the field. It showed up on the field. So we'll see what the guys have been up to since the last time we saw them in the bowl game. And, I can't wait to finally hear from Dabo to, talk about spring and hear kind of his introduction press conference and some of the injuries that we may not know of right now,
right,
that may be kind of last minute, guys that'll be limited last minute that we don't know about, because that stuff always happens, right? Like right now we think we have a good grasp of, pretty much everybody's playing. This guy might be a little limited, but for the most part, we got our main people, right? And then all of a sudden, Dabo does his introduction press conference, and he's asked about the health of the team, and he rattles off 5 or 6 people, and we're like, wait, what? When did that happen? He got his knee scoped. I didn't know about that, right? So that'll be interesting in the first press conference. Again, we may not have a ton of information next week for our show because practice is not going to start until Wednesday. But at least we'll have the first day of spring practice to talk about. We'll have some interviews to kind of digest and look at, and just some initial thoughts from spring practice, and hopefully a more dialed in report of who's participating and who's not participating.
100%. With that being said, we've kind of talked about, who we expect to kind of break out in a previous show. But it's good to kind of talk about, just kind of what are our overall expectations, for what we're going to learn in spring, because I think one of the things that we have fallen victim to in the past is we go through we go through spring practice and we hear all these great things, and it's very easy to kind of get lost in all of that and kind of lose perspective, and it affects how you feel about the team heading into the year. So I think it's pretty I think it's pretty good and healthy to kind of set our expectations now and kind of kind of hold on to those, and you take what you hear out of spring practice on the whole as a grain of salt. You want to hear individual names and kind of like who's standing out, but you never want to take any overarching takeaways, because at the end of the day you never know what a team is until they actually trot out there. And these last few seasons have certainly they've certainly shown that. So like, what are your kind of what do you expect to take away from spring practice?
Couple things that I really expect to take away from spring practice. First and foremost, has Cade grown and how much? I think we'll be able to see. Obviously we'll hear stuff coming out of spring, and I'm sure most of it will be positive. But really, I think that April 6th spring game may be able to tell us quite a bit, because your eyes aren't going to lie to you. And yes, is it just a spring game and you're playing against your players, and does it mean anything? No, not necessarily. But I think that will give us a glimpse into, is he the same guy, or is he reading the field better? Is he more comfortable in the pocket? Is he better at deciding to step up or get rid of the ball, or escape out of the pocket and use his legs? Is he a better decision maker? That's what I expect to hear out of fall camp from the quarterback position, Cade Klubnik, right? As far as the offensive line goes for me, I truly expect to kind of hear of some separation of who's going to get majority of the reps, right? Maybe not. I'm not going to sit here and say I expect a full locked in starting five heading out of spring practice, right? But I expect to hear a couple guys that have taken that next step, right? At least a couple guys that have clearly started to separate themselves and taken that next step, right? And then as far as defensive end goes, that particular position, I expect that we find out whether we have somebody capable of starting not every down, but most downs opposite TJ Parker. Do we have that guy in that locker room right now? I think it's a possibility that we do. But again, I expect us to know who that is, that main guy that stepped up opposite TJ Parker. And do we have that guy in the locker room or not, right? So whether we do or we don't, right? I expect to have that information in spring practice. And then if we don't, obviously I would expect that we address that via the transfer portal. I know, sounds crazy as a Clemson fan. I'm talking about the transfer portal. I know we don't use it. But if that dude doesn't exist right now in that locker room to step up and start opposite TJ Parker, we 100% have to address that in the transfer portal. And will the options be, will we have a lot of options there? Probably not. But we would have to do something at that point. So those are kind of my expectations. Those are kind of the big ticket items to me. I didn't hit on receiver, but I could go through every single position group. I just wanted to highlight a few that kind of mean the most to me and what I expect to learn from spring practice based off those positions.
Yeah, and you pretty much, I mean, we're pretty much on the same page as far as kind of the big things. Another thing is kind of underrated, but we certainly saw the effects of it this past season. But what does kicker look like? That's going to be a storyline I'm following just as
I know you
closely as
ain't lying.
everything else. Yeah.
Good Lord.
With you have Robert Gunn returning, and of course you have the highly touted true freshman and Nolan Hooser, cannon for a leg himself coming in. You got to have somebody that can make kicks consistently, because
one of those dudes got one of those dudes got to be the guy, right? Yeah. I mean, we'll see. Yeah, you make a great point there.
I don't think there's going to be any more grad students living in Charleston that will be able to call up and come kick in a pinch. I don't think we're going to have that option this year. So you got to figure it out, and it's got to happen soon, because you cannot go into the season the way you did last year. That was one of the most mind-blowing things I've seen. And I haven't given up on Robert Gunn, because sometimes with kickers, it's just especially as early on, you just adjusting to the college game and just kind of not letting the mental trappings that can happen when you're kicking get to you. I think that's a lot of what needs to change for him. And he's certainly not the first kicker to struggle, highly touted kicker to struggle early on in his career. I mean, we talked about his predecessor, BT Potter, was pretty brutal. And
then turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah, it turned out that one of the best kickers in school history. Catman was the exact same way. Like Chandler Catanzaro, he was horrible. I don't think a lot of people remember it, because he grew into such a great kicker, and he spent a long time in the NFL. So you just kind of keep it out of your mind. You don't really think about it. Man, he was bad early on in his career too. So it's it is a lot of times it is just a mental thing. But you have to. Robert Gunn, he either needs to take that next step, or you got to hope that Nolan Hooser is that guy. I think he is, but I still would like it if you had two. It'd be great to have two options at kicker instead of we'll throw out whoever we think might be the best. So if you have that, the competition for both for both guys, it will be good. But especially you need to at least have one, because you flat out lost games because you didn't have.
Yeah, and it not only did you lose games, but it changed the way that you played the game.
Yep.
As you crossed the 50-yard line, it changed the way Clemson played games. You could see the difference in the play calling from the Clemson offensive staff after it was very evident that we didn't have a solid kicking game, and it wasn't going to be solid for the remainder of the season. You could see the change that happened. And, I think you make a good point, man. Like, we can't give up on Robert Gunn just because he had a rough year. You see the leg talent. Every time the man kicks the ball off, it's gone. Like, the dude has a cannon for a leg. And, you mentioned a couple great Clemson kickers there that started off their career probably equally as bad, if not worse, and ended up being some of the greatest kickers that Clemson's ever had, right? You talk about Catman, that dude, he's a lengthy NFL career.
Yep.
Spent forever in the league. Has had an amazing career, not just at Clemson, but in the NFL as well. And then BT Potter, same thing, man. Didn't start out great, ended up to be really great. So maybe that'll be Robert Gunn's story. At least we would hope so. But if not, young man Hoosier there is going to have to get the job done. You would hope with those two highly touted kickers that Clemson brought in Robert Gunn and Hoosier, that one of those guys would step up this year and be consistent. That's really what lacks, is the consistency And if we don't have that again this season, I think that's important that you bring it up. It's not an aspect of the game that we talk about a lot, but if you watched Clemson football last year, you saw how important the kicking game was, and how detrimental it can be when you don't have that portion of the game locked up.
Yep, absolutely. And so, there's a lot of things about this team, that I need to see something, and you mentioned the spring game, and there are some, typically at a lot of places it's man, don't take too much from the spring game because
Mm-hmm.
it's a celebration of the end of spring practice, and they do a lot of things they're not going to do, and all of that. But the last few seasons, the spring game has been pretty indicative of what the team ended up being in the fall.
Yeah.
When you think about it, just and we kind of excused it, and we're like, oh, it's with those same things, it's the spring game and doesn't really mean anything, and we weren't there for the other scrimmages that they had where the
Mm-hmm.
offense looked good and all, apparently. So allegedly.
I'm not so sure about that.
That's what. Yeah, allegedly.
That's a all caps allegedly.
Yeah. So that's that's kind of one of the things that if the offense looks more like it has in previous spring games, I don't think that necessarily means that it's going to be more of the same, this year, but it's definitely not a good sign. We certainly had better spring games in the past, where you saw the offense, and even if it wasn't a flawless offensive performance, you were like, you saw us, oh yeah, we're going to be pretty good. I remember the 2018 spring game was one of the most exciting moments as a Clemson fan, when you saw, you got to see Trevor Lawrence, Justin Ross, he had and T. Higgins, just watching those guys, you were like, okay, we're going to be pretty good. Like you didn't think, oh man, we're going to go 15-0 national champions good.
Right.
But you saw the plays that were being made, and you were just like, wow.
You could clearly see that offense was good. Like this offense is going to put up points. Like defenses are going to have a problem stopping that offense that year. And then you contrast that, to your point of the spring game last year, and no.
So I think the spring game does. I think in Clemson's case, it does. When you normally say don't take much from it, I think there will be things that you can glean from it, just because of how similar they look to the games we would end up seeing in the season.
Yeah.
So,
and it's I think it's not only that, but I think because Clemson runs their spring game a little more uniquely than maybe most of the rest of the schools around the country. I know every Clemson fan probably knows this already, but Clemson splits up into two separate teams for the spring game, like two true teams, and they try to split talent as evenly as possible. So I think that's one of the reasons that you end up seeing similar play in the spring game that then translate to later on that season. You see that same type of play because of the way that they kind of split the teams up and they play it like a true game. There's two separate teams. There's two separate coaching staffs. There's I think conditioning and you get out of practices and stuff. All this stuff is on the line. So they're trying to win the game. They're trying to play hard. So maybe that's one of the reasons that you can glean a little bit more, and that we've seen some of that similarity between the spring game and play later on that season. It's interesting you make that point, and you're right. Thinking back on it now, it is almost scary how similar they look in some aspects of the spring game than they do later on in the season. So here's to hoping that the offense is much improved for the 2024 edition of the Clemson spring game, the orange and white game.
100%. Yeah.
Because if not, man, might be in for another long one, and I'm not too interested in that. I don't want to see it. This is the first year of the 12-team playoff. We cannot miss the first year of the 12-team playoff. That is
I certainly would not. I certainly wouldn't love that. But
that to me, that is unacceptable, man. Yeah. Like, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it works out. But exciting stuff to come for the spring.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, I think that'll wrap up our kind of spring talk there. Interested to see kind of how it plays out and who's going to be participating. I hope we get a lot of coaches' interviews. I hope we get to hear from our new coaches that are new to the staff this year during spring practice. A little bit of feedback from them, I think, would go very far in looking for some of the insights that we're looking for. But let's go ahead and transition to our last kind of topic of the day. And that's our all new segment that we debuted last week, right? We debuted this last week. So our new segment on here is around college football. And last week we did it kind of as a rapid fire kind of segment. We hit a lot of the big stories that are going on around college football already in this show. So we'll talk about one kind of interesting story that you were actually talking to me about earlier, and that is the NCAA has banned decorating hotel rooms for recruits. Banned decorating hotel rooms for recruits. So, Jordan, tell us a little bit about the spirit of this rule. Why in the world would the NCAA care about hotel rooms and whether a university decorated or didn't decorate for that recruit?
Well, the funny thing is this rule is not necessarily the NCAA's doing. This is something that actually the member institutions have been pushing for a little while now. It's a level playing field rule, and it kind of puts a lot of stress on university departments as far as and John Terry mentions banned photo shoots too, and this is for a very similar reason, because of a lot of these schools are there's kind of there's differences in how much they can pay for these hotel rooms and stuff like that, and kind of the extravagance of it all. There's a lot of planning and a lot of labor that goes into it that the universities aren't really willing to pay for anymore. And some schools do it more than others, and so it's really an attempt to kind of just nix all of it together, and from a recruiting standpoint, because it is a logistical nightmare a lot of times. And there's also legal liability when it comes to indemnity and kind of protecting the schools when in case things happen in that hotel room. There's a lot of things that they can be held legally liable for. So it really it's something that the member institutions have been wanting to get rid of for a while. And so they said, hey, we want to get rid of this. Let's vote on it. And then the NCAA is like, oh, okay, well, we'll do that when we'll pass the law. So I thought, Bud Elliott tweeted about it, and I thought it was pretty good. He said, this is what the NCAA is good for, is they can be the fall guy when for rule changes that the schools actually want, that the public will have a lot of backlash towards. So the NCAA has kind of been the fall guy for this. They passed the law that the schools wanted. But that I thought that was kind of funny, interesting, and that's something that for the schools, it takes a lot of stress off of their their social media departments and their recruit staff, and the support staff that is responsible for putting a lot of these things together, because there's a lot of logistics, and then there's a legal liability side of things too. So it's not something that people think about, but that's kind of why they stopped. It was something they wanted to get rid of. So that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, man, I thought it was hilarious when you first told me about this, and I first heard about the story. I was like, hotel rooms, not decorating. What in the world is going? Like, why do they care?
Yeah.
But then you explain it, and it makes a whole lot of sense. I like that the universities and then the institutions kind of like just kind of nudge the NCAA, and they're like, hey, man, you want to make this rule? And the NCAA is just like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then backlash ensues, and the institutions are like right on the sides with the fans. They're like, I know, man, like completely ridiculous, right? Like, I'm sorry, we would really like to decorate that hotel room for you, but and do these photo shoots, but how the NCAA is. We don't want to be in violation, so it's funny how But I guess to your point, that is kind of what they're for. They're the common enemy. They're the one that everybody points to when you don't like something. So I guess they're still good for something. I assume.
Yeah.
At least
that's what they're good for. Yeah.
At least a few things. Just an interesting story going around college football. Most of college football has been dominated this week by the new playoff format. So obviously, we already talked about that earlier in the show. So I think at this point, we'll go ahead and start our transition and turn the show over to the people, Jordan. It is time to turn the show over to the live comment section. Now is your time, guys. Get your questions in, get your comments in, get your thoughts in. Hit your super chats if you want to be sure that we read it and answer your question and help support the show at the same time. Also, before we get into your guys' questions, we got 23 people here in the live chat that have stuck it out for an hour and 45 minutes with us so far. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It truly is humbling to both myself and Jordan every single time we get on here, and there's 20, 30, 40, 50 people in the live chat that are willing to come in and listen to what we have to say about college football. I want to remind you guys, we're just fans just like you guys. We just happen to be provided this platform by Mark that we're super grateful for, and we love to come on here and chop it up and talk about college football and Clemson football, more importantly, every single week. So thank you guys for showing up. Hope you guys hit that subscribe button. Hope you stick around. Hope you like what you see. And let's turn it over to the people, Jordan.
Let's do it. All right. Let's see what you guys are talking about. Will asks a question. He says, will Clemson make the playoff if they go 10-2? Obviously, that's a tough question to answer because there's a lot of context that has to be involved. But I would lean in the 12-team playoff. I would lean towards yes. It depends on what where those wins come.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, if they go 10-2, well, I guess you're counting, so the ACC, so the conference championships have already happened. And if Clemson if Clemson is only 10-2, then they didn't play in the ACC championship. I think it would very much depend, but I think they realistically could. I think at 10-2, you would be in position for, you could be you really could be anywhere from like 8 to 14 or whatever, and it also it depends on who snatches up those automatic qualifiers as far as the conference championships are concerned. So there's a lot of things that could go in, but I would lean. I would say 55-45. I would say Clemson makes it at 10-2, but it very much depends.
I think it's a pretty good possibility that Clemson would make it at 10-2. Granted, it would really depend on what happens around the rest of the country. Like, that's kind of a loaded question. But if you're asking me, I would think that Clemson makes a 12-team playoff at 10-2 more often than not. Um, so I don't. I think it's a pretty good possibility that they make it at 10-2. But you know, it's obviously nothing's a guarantee. We don't even really know what it's going to honestly look like for the new 12-team playoff. Like
Yeah.
does the first iteration of the 12-team playoff cause the playoff committee to seed teams differently, or do they do it similar to how they've been doing it in the 14 playoff, right? So like there's a possibility that rankings aren't done exactly like they have been, for the previous iterations of the 14 playoff, right? So you never know until we see
No.
it. But I would think a 10-2 Clemson would make it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a tough question because who are their wins? Who are the two losses to? How do they look in those? A lot of this is eye test, but it's going to come down to eye test, especially for these at-large bids,
Right.
and resumes. So
Were
is
they
is Clemson's overall strength of schedule going to be good enough? Are the teams they play this year going to be, good enough wins? I mean,
yeah.
especially say you lose to your two toughest games, which is Georgia and Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like say
Were
you lose those two games, does the rest of that schedule warrant and carry enough weight in the committee's eyes to give you one of those at-large bids? And that very much depends because NC State, they're coming off of a pretty nice 9-win season. Are they going to carry that momentum? Because historically, Dave Doran hasn't followed strong seasons with another great season, but maybe he breaks that trend. I don't know. We'll see. How does SMU look as a new member of the ACC? What
mm-hmm.
does I said SMU. We don't play SMU. I don't know why I mentioned them, but Stanford.
Stanford? Yeah.
I don't expect them to be particularly good, but how do they, how do they factor in? There's just obviously the non-comp outside of Georgia. I mean, you play South Carolina. Are they, are they an improved team from last year?
Mm-hmm.
There's
and
a
that
lot of question marks.
Not only the rest of the schedule, but your two losses, were they competitive, right? Or did you get your doors blown off in week 1 by a Georgia? Did you get beat by 10 plus points against a Florida State team, right? Or were they last second field goal, less than a touchdown, margins of victory, right? That will factor in as well, how you looked in those losses, right? So tons of stuff goes into that. But I think Jay brings up an interesting point, and he said in any 9-3 plus Big Ten SEC team will have the upper hand. I mean, yeah, they're very well might, like, there may be a 9-3 SEC or Big Ten team that gets in over a 10-2 Clemson team, because there's no mistaking it. The narrative is out there. The SEC and the Big Ten will be weighted much heavier than an ACC or a Big 12 team.
Yep.
That's just the fact of the matter. Like it, don't like it, fair, unfair, doesn't really matter. That's what's going to happen. So if you have a similar resume to an SEC team, they're probably going to get the nod. That's just the way it goes, because they have that SEC conference logo next to their university logo. So that's a good point that Jay brings up, and I tend to agree.
Absolutely. John says, how did I miss that Clemson's next incoming quarterback, Blake Hebert, he's referring to, is Canadian? I learned that this weekend. Hebert has only been in the States playing football for 3, now going on 4 years, started in British Columbia. Yeah. So, yeah, that's true. I don't know much about, what his background prior to moving here, but his family I know his family has moved a few times. We've got that that Canadian action flavor going on. So that'll be fun. But we'll see. It is interesting. It's probably that's not something that they talk about a lot when you read articles about him. It's not something that they mention a ton. But yeah, that is true.
Yeah, it'll be so. We'll see how it works out for us. He's Garrett Riley kind of tabbed him pretty immediately once he came to Clemson and kind of closed the deal in short order. So he's a guy that Garrett Riley wanted, and seems to be a guy that's going to fit in with the offense well. So we'll see how he looks once he gets on campus.
Absolutely. Tiggs asks any prediction on Clemson's record in 2024? Not at this point. No.
Way too early for that. I'm not mentally there yet. I haven't studied the schedule enough yet, but we'll definitely stay tuned. We'll definitely do that as we get closer to the season. That'll definitely be something that we probably go game by game, opponent by opponent, talk about and break it down a little bit further. So stay tuned. That video's coming. That show will happen. Just not yet.
Yeah, no, we're not there yet. I gotta see spring practice. I need to get a feel on this team because I don't have any. I have some things that I think maybe possibly could be we truly don't know right now.
And not to mention not only our roster but our opponents' rosters
of
could look very different after spring and after the next cycle of transfers and all that kind of stuff. So the rosters right now will not be the rosters come this fall. So, until then, it's really not. It doesn't make sense to make predictions at this point, just because we know for sure the rosters are going to change.
100%.
It's just a matter of how much will they change.
Jay asks, has there been an update on Flapjack lately? Not that I've seen. I mean, he's not somebody that I've asked about in a while. So I mean, as far as I know, I mean he's doing all right. But we're at a point where all they're doing is workouts, and so I'm excited to hear about him in spring. Because he spent a lot of his freshman year injured and limited. So we'll see what kind of physical transformations he's made and kind of where he is, because he flat out wasn't really ready to go last year. So we'll see. Let's see. Jeremiah asks a good question. He says, could y'all see a guy like Caden Story move to 5-tech with him being only 280 and seeing him repping in the bowl prep? I mean, absolutely. And I think that's something that they've been evaluating for a while. If Caden Story is a guy that's kind of been lost in not lost in the rotation because he just hasn't really played much to begin with, but he's a guy that's kind of been sort of forgotten about. He was that late take in the 2022 recruiting cycle. He came over when Nick Eason took the job. They have a close relationship. I think Nick Eason is his cousin, actually. So there's prior relationship there, and so but he came into a loaded defensive tackle room. That's kind of where he was recruited as. But I think he is kind of a tweener type that could potentially have some impact there. So. Yeah, I mean, I could see it, and I know that was something that they were evaluating and repping him at some during the bowl game, just to kind of see, because this team needs options at defensive end, and you got to give guys a shot, because there's beyond TJ Parker, you just don't know. Is Cade Denhoff going to take that next step? We don't know. Is Zaire Patterson, is the light bulb going to come on? Jaheim Lawson. How did the freshmen come in and look? Darian Mayo, Adam Kasai, we don't know. So that's got to be on the table as well. we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I totally could see Caden Story playing a lot of defensive end here in the spring. Let's see. Tiggs asks, any incoming freshmen showing you any spark or possibly working into a starting role? Well, they're not showing me any spark yet, but we haven't really gotten to lay eyes on them. But I mean, I have some suspicions of guys that you and I have talked about it a ton.
Yep.
And so, not just the early enrollees, but some of the a couple of the summer guys too. But could totally see a guy like Bryant Wesco or TJ Moore coming in and playing early. I'm really high. Obviously, I think TJ Moore has a lot of potential as far as starting early. But I think Bryant Wesco has that ability as well. So we'll see. I mean, they're two extremely talented receivers. So could totally see them working their, maybe not even, and even not necessarily being a starter, because that kind of is a nebulous concept anyway. Because if you cannot play the first play of the game, but play the majority of the snaps, and you're recorded as not starting for that game. So
right. Yep.
So it's always it's kind of arbitrary, but just being big time contributors. There's quite a few guys in this class that I could see doing that. So,
I don't look.
Yeah,
you already mentioned the receivers. I think those are probably some of the biggest possibilities. But you can't forget a guy like Sammy Brown, a guy that can contribute probably pretty early. I think the only hang up there may be the mental side of the game. I don't know what his transition is going to be, and linebacker tends to be a pretty tough transition, especially in a Clemson defense where they're responsible for a lot of responsibility, a lot of different things that they have to know and understand and fully grasp before they can get that real playing time. So that may be the only thing holding him back, because physically I think he can contribute right now. It'll just be how he transitions to the mental part of the college game.
So and you got to remember, he hasn't been playing linebacker that long, and
right.
So he's still, he's grasping the nuances of the position. Mm-hmm. So that's something you have to watch. I mean, he's a very smart kid, and I think he has the work ethic, and I think he's going to, become a really great player. But it's just, how quick does that learning curve happen?
And he's repping that 47, so that'll be fun to see in the Clemson in the back of the Clemson defense, or I should say the middle of the Clemson defense.
That'll be really cool. Jay asked a good question. He says, "What are the chances Dabo Light, Shane Beamer in parentheses, is fired before the Palmetto Bowl?" I'm gonna be honest. It's a funny question. I don't think Shane Beamer is in any real danger as far as his job security, at least this season. I tend to I don't want to say I have a pulse on that program, but I just don't think they're in a position to do that. I think there's, despite last season, he has a strong recruiting class coming in. They've given him a chance to make, coaching changes and staff changes, and he's done that. They've utilized the portal pretty well. I just, I think they're going to give him this year and next year at least. So I don't think, barring like a disaster of a season, I don't think he's in any real trouble, because I think internally they really believe in what he's doing, whether that's justified or not. He's popular with recruits. I mean, he's done a good job on the trail for the most part. So, I hate to give anything about that program credit, but I do think he has done a pretty solid job. So on that front, and getting guys interested in South Carolina at a time where that's kind of waned over the last 10 years. So we'll see.
Hey,
We'll see how that goes. But I don't expect him to be in any real danger
maybe
this season.
maybe if they go 3-9 and have a blowout loss to Clemson at the end,
that wouldn't look very good.
63-17 type deal.
Yeah.
Uh,
Could you imagine?
I don't know why that score popped in my head.
I don't know either. Where'd you pull that?
I don't know where I got that from. It just came out of nowhere to me. I don't know.
Yeah, if Clemson scores 63 against anybody this year,
hey, look, we have made a transformation on offense, and all things are looking up if we get to 63 points. I don't care if it's against freaking what's the smallest team we play this year?
Who do we play?
What was it?
Do we play the Citadel? I think it's the Citadel.
Might be the Citadel. There you go. If we put up 63 points against the Citadel, that'll be an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. No disrespect to Clemson, but the offense has not been capable of doing that against anybody in recent years. So, but it would be nice. Shout out to Jay for the funny joke there. Dabo Sweeney Light. I like that one. Shane Beamer's Dabo Sweeney Light. Oh, the poor South Carolina fan. Well, I say poor. I don't really feel bad for them. So
yeah, no.
I hope they lose every game between now and forever.
Yeah, that 100%. I'm with you on that. There's some people like I've seen this take, and Clemson is not the only fan base that has people like this, but like there's this small section of the fan base that will say it's like, oh, I want our rivals to be good, so when we play them, it means more. I'm like, no, I can't get behind that.
What?
Like I've seen that take, and not just from
Right.
I've seen it from some Clemson fans. I've seen it from other fan bases with
man.
big time, big main rivals.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just like, I don't understand that. I've never understood that mentality. It's like I've never in my life ever rooted for a South Carolina victory in anything.
No, I love seeing them lose football games. It's like Clemson winning football games, and then right under that is South Carolina losing football games. It gives me great joy to watch South Carolina lose football games.
When South Carolina went 4-8 back in 2019, what was it, like 2019? Like and Clemson, I think 38-3. I didn't enjoy it any less because they sucked.
No, I don't care.
I've never enjoyed not enjoyed a win over South Carolina just because they were bad.
It's never not fun to blow out your rival.
Right.
Like that's always fun.
Beating them while they're good is cool and all. Like, and that's fun for sure. But I'm never going to root for that. Like I want that. I want that fan base suffering.
Yeah.
Whenever they can, like that's the nature of this, right? Yeah. Especially Clemson, South Carolina, like that's a deeply rooted, feud, like historical feud. Like you just. I've never understood.
Think about how awesome it would be for us as Clemson's fans to give South Carolina their first perfect season of 0-12. Like that would be fantastic. Like, would that not be fun to give them a perfect season, the only perfect season they're ever going to get?
Well, didn't they go? Well, I think we already because didn't they? I think we already have done that because I think they
might have.
I think they went 0-11 back when we were playing 11 regular season games. I think they went 0-11. And what year was that? I think it was Lou Holtz's second. I don't think it was his first year. I think it was his second year. They won. I don't think they won a game. I think it was like 99, 98 or 99. Somebody who's a better historian than me fact check that. But I believe that was 98 or 99.
Y'all spin up your Google machines.
Yeah,
and get us that information. But that's equally as fun to me as them being, it being an undefeated game. Like it being an undefeated game and us beating them. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, I'm not saying that wouldn't be fun, but I don't root for South. I'm with you. I don't root for South Carolina to win any game, anytime, Doesn't matter who they're playing. I'm rooting for the other team. Whatever team they're playing, I hope the other team wins. I saw Will in there say we need to take it easy on the Citadel because his cousin plays for them. We try not to do them too dirty. They are a military college.
Yeah,
so,
we have a ton of respect for them.
We treat them with the utmost respect. I grew up going to a lot of the Citadel games, so I got a special place in my heart for the Citadel. But I hope Clemson blows them out. I don't care.
Okay, so it was his first season in Columbia.
There you go.
0-11. They went on this. It was it was like the longest losing streak in college football for that time.
See?
I remember. I don't think we were particularly. I think that was that. I believe that was Tommy West's last year at Clemson. I think that was the 3-8 year, if I remember correctly.
You're probably right.
And they were one of our 3 wins. I'm saying if I remember correctly, I wasn't alive when that, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah, I think so. But yeah, that was a time. The late '90s were a time to be a Clemson, South Carolina, because both programs were in the toilet.
Yeah, they were terrible. They were terrible.
There were some good games.
So bad. So bad. It is worst teams ever.
Yeah.
Don't miss that. I would like to give them an even better perfect season of 0-12.
Oh yeah, 0-12.
The 0-11 was fun, but the 0-12 would be better. So that'd be great. Let's root for that this year. Let's root for that.
It would surprise me. But hey, they've got a hell of a schedule.
Yeah, Shane Bieber would get fired for that.
Yeah. Oh,
if he went 0-12,
who do they play? Who do they play in the non-conference besides Clemson?
I'm not sure.
I'm gonna look this up real quick. This is probably the most we've ever spent talking about, outside of like a post-game or pre-game show. This is probably the most we've spent talking about South Carolina. We really don't do it much. So
we really don't.
Any South Carolina fans that are watching this and like, oh man, look at them. They can't help but think about South Carolina. It's like we
really don't.
We really don't talk about you that much.
We never do. You'd have to be more relevant for us to be really worried about you.
Oh damn. Okay, so they play Wofford. I almost said Oklahoma, but that's a conference game now. Wofford, Akron, Old Dominion.
Akron? Good God. Wofford, Akron, and Old Dominion. Well, I mean, I guess they could.
Yeah, that's their. Okay, yeah. So they open. Uh-oh.
You're back.
Okay, sweet. All right. Because I went completely dark for a second.
Yeah.
So yeah, they play. I don't know if you got that, but they play ODU, Akron, and Wofford, and of course Clemson at the end of the year.
That's right.
So honestly,
it's that vaunted SEC out of conference schedule right there.
Well, you know what? If I were them, I would do the same. Looking at that conference schedule, you want me to read off their conference schedule this year? So
let's hear their schedule for.
They play at Kentucky second week of the year. Then they they play LSU at home. Then they get the Akron game. They are back at home against Ole Miss, who is projected to be a good team, a really good. So I mean, Kentucky is not a bad team, and
that's a losable game.
Yeah, LSU certainly
loss.
Going to be one of a contender for the playoff. Ole Miss
loss.
Probably going to be a contender for the playoff. At Alabama,
loss.
At Oklahoma,
loss.
Get to reunite with BV. They're home against Texas A&M. Mike Elko. That's
that'll be interesting.
That's a winnable game, but they've only beaten them once. So. Since they've been in the SEC, at Vanderbilt, that's a win for anybody.
Hey, that's a winnable game. You better win that game.
Yeah, at home against Missouri and that offense that returns basically all their big time playmakers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a losable game
and
right
has
there.
owned them like the last 5 years.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
They always lose to Missouri.
Yeah. And then they get a break, get Wofford at home, and then of course they come back to Death Valley for the season finale. So yeah, I mean, you look at this schedule and you're
Yeah,
like,
you're right. You're right. I would have scheduled that out of conference.
you need those three cupcakes.
Yeah, you need those non-con games right there.
Because finding
Absolutely.
3 wins on here is kind of daunting as far as the conference schedule. I mean, at Kentucky is winnable.
So they're not making. So they're not making a bowl game.
It's on the table. At Kentucky, I think they have a.
So they got to beat. They got to beat.
That's a good chance to get a win.
They have to beat Vanderbilt,
Vanderbilt,
Missouri, and Kentucky.
Yeah, and possibly A&M at home. So those are the 4. You need to win 3 of those 4 games.
3 of those 4 games. Missouri, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and A&M. You got to win 3 of those.
I don't think you're beating Ellis. I don't think they're beating LSU. I don't think they're beating Ole Miss. Definitely don't think they're beating Alabama and Bryant-Denny. I don't think they're beating Oklahoma on the road. Yeah, man. I mean, as it stands right now, I don't think they're beating. I definitely don't think they're beating Clemson again in Death Valley. Could you imagine?
No.
Well, so yeah, that's it's a pretty rough schedule. So there's there's a possibility that South Carolina goes 5-7 again, but they were actually a better team than they were last year because that schedule.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not into giving South Carolina any breaks whatsoever. But yeah, that's a pretty tough schedule, man.
Especially breaking in a new quarterback. I mean,
Hey, that quarterback better watch out because Spencer Rattler almost got murdered last year.
Yeah, So they're gonna have to make massive improvements on the offensive line for sure. I mean, they return basically everybody, but are they any good is the problem. And listen, Lenore Sellers is a guy with a lot of physical ability, but I think there's a lot of people. A lot of that fan base that is just pretty confident that he's going to light the world on fire.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I know how great he was a great college. I'm sorry, he was great in high school, and you see the physical ability. He's a great runner, really good arm talent, but it's that step up, and he's his first, a true freshman starting in the SEC with an offensive line that made the potential, second round, maybe late first round pick at quarterback look pretty pedestrian and rough at times. So I don't know. We'll see. But that is a daunting schedule when you have the kind of roster that South Carolina has.
Well, I hope you lose every game.
Yeah,
Shane Cock.
I hope so. If they open up and lose to Old Dominion, that'll be the funniest. That'll be one of the funniest days of my life. Hey, Shane Beamer, he's got Virginia Tech ties. They like to lose to Old Dominion too. So.
That's true. That's true. Hey, Old Dominion is out here just picking people off. So
they've owned the state of Virginia.
Yeah, that's their state. So yeah. Oh man. All right, moving on from the Shane Cox.
Yeah, we spent too much time on that.
Way too much time. They don't deserve that sort of respect on this show. They only get that sort of airtime when we're playing them, and that's a long way off.
Tony says FSU and Clemson to the Big Ten would make 20. That's a perfect number. I mean, hey,
it's a possibility.
It's on the table. I mean, there's going to be a lot of speculation and a lot of people reporting. There's it seems like every day there's like some random guy that claims to have sources like Clemson and Florida State are expected to announce their departure from the ACC. Um, uh, and and it's going to be imminent within the coming months or something. And you're just like, okay, well, I guess one of these guys is going to be right. I probably, because if you keep firing, just the odds say you'll probably get it right eventually. But yeah, we'll see. But Florida State has definitely been the more vocal about kind of their efforts to get out, but Clemson is certainly
Oh yeah.
Clemson is certainly in has been doing their work kind of in silence and behind the scenes. So we'll see kind of what the fruits of that labor turns out, but there does seem to be some headway being made as far as
Yeah, I
a
mean,
potential solution.
none of us truly know what's going on behind the scenes and the moves and the meetings and the conversations that are being made and had. But you couldn't convince me that Clemson's just burying their head in the sand and being like, well, we'll see. No. They're not talking about it, obviously, at least not to the point where, Florida State is doing it very publicly and, they got the lawsuit going and the lawyers working and they're fighting about trying the case in North Carolina versus Florida. And, all the legality and stuff is being played out basically on social media and on the in the national media landscape. But, Clemson's back there working, best believe. They're not just going to sit by and just, go along with whatever the ACC says.
No.
They're obviously going to look out for their best interest. Whatever would be best case scenario for Clemson, that's what I would expect them to do. Will that be the Big Ten? Will that be the SEC? Will the Big Ten and the SEC even exist, or are we heading to something different? Like, who knows?
Yeah,
just hang on and enjoy the ride at this point, I guess. Who knows where we end up?
Enjoy is a strong word, but we're on it anyway.
Hey, look, the roller coaster has left the station. There's no getting off at this point. Destination unknown. Here, buckle up. Here we go.
Yep, 100%. We have a recruiting question. John asks, do you think DJ Pickett's recruitment is done with Clemson? Sounds like styles aren't a match and both sides backed off. Well, actually, John, it may have seemed that way, but I think as it stands now, I think Clemson I don't think Clemson has really backed off, and they've made some headway. DJ Pickett, he released his top 5 last week, and Clemson wasn't included. But there's been they haven't stopped communicating, and with some of the changes that happened at Michigan, who was in his original top 5, I think Clemson is looking to work their way back in the table and secure one of those and secure an official visit. So I wouldn't close the book on DJ Pickett just yet. So, but we'll see. We'll see. JS, since we have a healthy wide receiver room this spring, do you think the deep ball will be a focus? I mean, I think it has to. I mean, that's one of the things this team greatly missed was, the ability to generate explosive plays through the air. And, when you tried, you weren't always successful. You were very rarely were you successful, and for a lot of reasons. Sometimes it was misprotection. Sometimes it was a bad throw. Sometimes receivers not fighting for the ball. It just for whatever reason, this offense never could connect on those shots. And that's what Garrett Riley wants to be able to do. That's what he did at TCU and his previous other stops was, this team has to, this offense has to be able to create explosive pass plays. And we've, for 3 years in a row, have been some of the worst, one of the worst teams in the Power 5 as far as explosive pass play rate. So I think we were 94th this year. It's just not going to cut it. You're not going to win you're not going to win a whole lot of playoff games and big big time matchups doing that. And it definitely opens you up to lose games you shouldn't, which Clemson certainly did. So. Yeah, I think the wide receiver room is in a better place than it's been in a while, and so that's that's going to be a focus because there has to be some rapport there. And of course, you have a potential All ACC caliber. Well, the third team, he already was All ACC, but potential first team All ACC plus a caliber tight end that needs to be able to be more involved in the offense too. So. It really is about getting these pass catchers in general on the same page, and Cade, being able having that being in sync with them, because that just was not a lot of the times wasn't the case last year. Porsche Pal 79 says, "I really want David Sanders, and I think Clemson is in the lead with him right now."
Hey, that would be outstanding.
Maybe
to land that guy.
Yeah, but no, David Sanders is certainly the number one. Like as far as the staff is concerned, and Clemson, he's the guy. That is, if you had to rank, regardless of position, David Sanders is number one. I mean, and for good reason. And I think Clemson has done a tremendous job with him and they made a ton of headway in this recruitment. And yeah, I certainly think if they're not leading, they are very much at the forefront, and I expect them to. Whenever he chooses to shut it down, I think Clemson will be one of those main contenders. So.
Yeah,
I think, and I think it's already starting to take shape right now. I really think it's there too. I think everybody else is that's just kind of where I feel this playing out. So
I think, at the bare minimum, we got a shot, and a real shot at landing, David Sanders. And for those of you who don't know, 5-star offensive tackle out of Providence Day, your stomping grounds up there near Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yep.
And a year ago, this would not have been the case for Clemson.
No.
So it shows you.
Even just 3 months ago.
There you go. Yeah, 3 months ago, this wouldn't have been an option for Clemson. I don't think he would have strongly considered Clemson, or really they would have gained any, momentum with him at all as far as recruiting.
Yeah, because he's a guy that Clemson has always been on his radar, and he grew up cheering for Clemson, but they had certainly kind of fallen by the wayside.
Yeah.
Leading up to the Matt Luke hire and all of that, and Clemson was certainly, they were around, and he was definitely giving Georgia and Tennessee more of his time, and some of these other, Alabama, so some of these other bigger programs, and it didn't seem like Clemson was going to be in contention. But man, we've said it 1,000 times. This Matt Luke hire has paid tremendous dividends, and I think at this point, as far as the offensive line class is concerned, I think right now they're potentially in a position to turn away a guy that would otherwise be a cornerstone in this class, because there's just, beyond David Sanders, there are quite a few guys that we've talked about that Clemson is very much in contention with, and they're just recruits, and these recruits talk to each other all the time. And there's a lot of buzz about Clemson just within the recruiting, with these offensive linemen. And Andrew Ivins was at I might have mentioned this last show, but Andrew Ivins was at a camp in Orlando, and all the buzz when he was talking with the offensive line group, there was just a lot of buzz about Clemson and Matt Luke and kind of what's kind of cooking up here. So there's a lot of intrigue right now. Josh Petty, one of the top offensive tackles in the class, along with David Sanders, has talked about getting to Clemson sometime in this spring as well. And Clemson has certainly been heavily involved with him. So there's just it's pretty. I don't think it can be overstated how big this Matt Luke hire was, and
Yeah,
I think it's already proving to be one of the biggest hires that Dabo has made.
and if we can keep him happy and keep him around, I mean, this guy could potentially transfer Clemson, not transfer.
I hope not transfer.
No,
Well, he's bringing transfers in.
Not. Well, he might do that too. He might do that.
Who knows?
We'll see. But he might transform Clemson into one of those elite offensive line groups year in and year out. One of those guys that just seem to reload on the offensive line. Because I think he's a coach that carries around that kind of weight. He's got that kind of ability when it comes to actually on the field coaching. And man, would I love to see Clemson become just a team that has elite offensive line play. That's something Clemson's never had. I mean, you take all the great teams that Clemson has had, and you look at the 2016 national championship, the 2018 national championship, perfect 15-0 season. Clemson has never had elite offensive line play ever, not through this run, not once. Nope. So to bring that to Clemson, I think would be an absolute game changer. So keep Matt Luke at all costs. Continue to let this man recruit the way he's doing, and we are well on our way to seeing a very different version of Clemson offensive linemen start cycling through, and possibly into the league as well.
Yeah, man, because I would just love if I could pull up Clemson's list of players in the NFL and see a ton of offensive guards, offensive tackles, centers.
Yep.
Like it's like, because that's the one position that you're just like, there's not a whole lot going on right now. I mean, John Simpson has been a really good starter for the Ravens. Tyler Shatley has started in spots for the Jags. Tremaine Ankrum has played some and started some, but beyond that,
they're not there.
There's not really much to speak of. Jackson Carman is a second string. And he's not even playing. I think he's playing guard for the Bengals. So you don't really have it. Jordan McFadden is still in the. He just got drafted, so he's still in the league. But you don't. There's not a whole lot to brag about from a Clemson standpoint as far as offensive line play is concerned. It really is just John Simpson. He's been a pretty good starter. And beyond that, you don't have anything else.
Right.
So it would be nice to be like, oh man, Clemson is offensive line. Offensive line. Could you imagine if Clemson got into the conversation of offensive line university? And
I would love it. I would love it, man. I've been wanting Clemson to become, that level of offensive line for a really long time. So I think now finally it's a possibility if we can keep a guy like Matt Luke around for an extended period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Last thing, we've hit the 2.5 hour mark, so it will be the last one. John mentions that, and this is something I completely forgot about. I thought about when we were getting ready to do our Around College Football segment, and then I just completely slipped my mind. Kirby did just lose his running back coach to be the head coach at Georgia State, Del McGee. If you are a avid follower of recruiting, how good Georgia's running back recruiting has been over the years. The reason for that is Del McGee. He's one of the most respected recruiters in the industry. If you go to his 24/7 Sports page and see all the list of prospects that he signed, it'll make you. You're like, wow, it's pretty nuts. He was a very underrated part of Georgia's success as far as just his ability as a recruiter, as a position coach. He did a lot, and that's a big loss for Kirby. So I'm interested to see kind of how they what their move is. It's certainly, anytime Georgia loses a big time staff member, that certainly helps Clemson because those two go at it for recruiting battles as as often as pretty much any two programs in the country. So, yeah, I wouldn't. I'm certainly not, shedding tears for Kirby. I mean, he's a two-time national champion, and they've been at the top of the sport. So, but any sort of move that even slightly inconveniences Georgia is good for Clemson.
That's right. It absolutely is. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. I think that'll do it for the listener question portion of our show, and thus the end of our show.
That's right.
It went a little bit long. We went a little bit longer than we typically. We usually do good at sticking around the 2 hours, but we spent a lot more time on our more playing stuff. So we wanted to give you guys time to actually get your questions in. So. There are a lot of good ones.
Yeah, man.
You and I can talk forever, so that's kind of how it goes. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, they don't have to say much to keep us engaged and talking and rambling on forever about college football. We could probably sit on here 4 or 5 hours and then look down and be like, oh man, we should probably, go to bed and get ready for our real jobs tomorrow. But it's always fun to come on here, man, and chop it up with you and all the people in here. We still got 23 people in here hanging out with us right now in the middle of February, mind you. And this is a college football show. So that tells you about these loyal people that we have hanging out with us right now, Jordan, and watching us. I truly do appreciate every single one of you who come by, who leave a comment, who like the video. Me and Jordan have started doing a thing at the end of every show. Jordan will go into the description of the video, and he will post the timestamps for each segment that we did tonight. So when we talked about the EA Sports college football game coming out, when we talked about spring practice and so on and so forth, right? When we talked about the new college football playoff format, all those timestamps will be there. So if you're one of the many people that come by and watch us on a rewatch, thank you so much. Hopefully those timestamps are helping you out and helping you see the particular segments that you want to see us talk about. I know there's not very many people out there. There are some, but not very many people out there want to get onto a YouTube video and listen for 2.5 hours. But those of you that stick with us through the whole thing, it truly is humbling. I appreciate every single one of you. Jordan, the floor is yours. Send the people off.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments. Seriously, we're grateful each and every week for those of you that tune in, and those of you on the rewatch squad. We love you guys as well. So, with that being said, great show, and we'll see you guys next week.
That's right. Until next time, be here next Thursday, 7 p.m. Me and Jordan will be here. And as always, go Tigers. See you guys in the next one.
Later, y'all.